Okay, I promise I am working on that build video. It's taken a lot more time than I expected. I managed to rough cut the whole thing down from 4 hours down to about 55 minutes, but it's still too long. I don't think anyone will watch a 1 hour long video, especially since it's like a first person view. It's gonna get seasick, I think. So in the end, I think I will have to divide that video up in a couple of parts at least. And with the Christmas and New Year's break coming up, I will have some more time to work on that video. So please bear me just a bit longer. This video though is something I had originally planned to include in that build video, but since it's so long anyway, I figured I'd just do a separate video of this that I can do quick and get out a bit sooner. And that is the Di2 configuration I use on my open up gravel bike, which is a 1x system, so only rear mech. And the mech is the Shimano XT Di2 one, combined with the Dura Ace shift levers up front. So with the etube app that you can get on either the iPhone or the iPad or on PC on Windows, you can configure the buttons however you want basically. You can make it shift like etap, for example, shift down on the right and shift up on the left, or vice versa, or anything you like. If you are going to configure your shifters with iOS app, either for iPhone or iPad, you need a Bluetooth unit, which is this part. This is just a Di2 cable. I think most people that use this actually keep this inside the bike. Shimano says you shouldn't have this inside the frame, but from what I read and heard, there's no trouble having this inside the frame or handlebars or something like that. If you have this mounted to Di2 system all the time, you can use it to connect to your Garmin computer, for example, set up your shifters to change the pages on your Garmin, and you can also display on your head unit, either I think Wahoo also supports now. You can display your shift metrics, which gear you're in, if you want that for some reason. As you can see, I don't have mine in the bike. I only basically put this on when I need to update the firmware, which is almost never, and when I want to configure my shifting. Other than that, I just keep this in my tool bag. Reason being, I had a friend who used this connected all the time, and it apparently drained his battery much quicker. I don't know if that was a fault with his unit or something, but since I don't really use that head unit connection function or anything, I just figured I saved a few grams because I'm wired like that, and just connect it when I need to do something. This is not enough. You also need to make sure you have the right battery. So the Bluetooth compatible battery from Shimano is the BTDN110. The old one, which is called BTR2, I think, is not compatible, unfortunately. If you have the external battery, you can just change your battery holder. I will put the model numbers somewhere on the screen. Enough of that, let's connect this to my bike and see how I have configured my shifters to work with my 1x setup on this open up. So the easiest way for me to connect the Bluetooth dongle is to my rear mech, since that's the only cable that is exposed really on my bike. Pretty simple. Disconnect the rear mech, connect it to the one side of the Bluetooth dongle, take a short Di2 cable, connect it to the rear mech again, and the other end into the Bluetooth unit. And that's all that is to it. Of course, like I said, you can have this Bluetooth unit connected to your bike all the time as well, if that's your jam. So then I'm gonna start up the etube iPhone app. The quality is questionable at best, especially when it comes to the English in this app, but if you watch my videos, you're pretty used to weird English, so take it as a challenge. Once the Bluetooth LE connection button is shown on the screen, we need to put the system in connection mode by pressing the button on the junction for 1 second, or a long press is probably how I would describe it. Once you see the LEDs going back and forth like this, it's in connection mode. So just click the big Bluetooth button on the screen and the Bluetooth units should appear pretty fast. Just click that and it will connect to that unit. Might take a few seconds. In my case, it almost took about 30 seconds, so I will just speed this up. Once you're connected, you're greeted with these three options: customize, update firmware, and preset.
I will go through all of these a bit later, but first let's click customize and see how I have my 1xDi2 configuration set up. And if you notice on the top of the screen there, it actually sets Di2 MTB, and that's because I have that mountain bike XT Di2 rear mech connected. Then we click the switch unit, which is the shifters. And if you take a look at my left shifter, which actually survived my crash, the default shifting setup, as you probably know, the left shifter will shift your front mech if you have one, but since this is a 1x, I have set up this shifter to shift the same way my right shifter does, with the only difference is I have the hidden top button to shift up, so to harder gear. So the reason I have my left set basically the same as my right shifter is because I usually drink with my right hand, which means I can still shift up and down with my left hand even if I have my right hand occupied with other stuff, like water bottles, cameras, snacks or whatnot. So that's the reasoning behind that. So if we take a look at the right shifter, which I had to replace as my old one exploded in the crash, it's now set up with the default factory settings. As you can see, you shift the rear mech up and down, and that hidden button on the top of the shifter is set to D-fly by default, which means that, for example, you can control your head unit by switching pages and stuff like that. I do not use that function. I much prefer to have this button as a shift button. So like you saw on my right shifter, I have this to shift up. I set this one to shift down. So when I'm in a tucked time trial position with my hands grasping the hoods, I can just shift up and down with my left and right thumb on top of the hood, so to speak. And I found that actually be a really useful extra shift option to have. So that's my reasoning for that. If you go into shift mode, this is only useful if you have a 2x system with a front mech, so I can't really do anything here. But here you basically set your synchro shift options from where it should shift your front mech after how many shifts on the rear, etc, etc. If we go into multi-shift, here's where you set your shift speed. If like you push and hold your shift button in, how fast it will go through the gears. You can also set here how many shifts it will do once you hold that shift button in. All my settings here is basically normal because I don't really use the multi-shift function apart from when I'm stopping at the red light or something like that. And the normal speed was basically the speed I felt most natural to me. But yeah, it's a fun setting to experiment with. A nice function they include in this app is the preset function. So basically what I do is when I have my shifter set up as I want them, I click the load settings from bike, and that means I can say that configuration as a preset. Well, you see here a summary of all my settings. I click this save button and it would save it as a preset on my phone. So if I, like last time I crashed and have to replace some parts, I can just load this file again without having to set up every single button again. So that's a pretty nice thing. The last part take a look at is the firmware update, and basically you get a notification badge if there's a firmware available. It's pretty straightforward. You just click the update icon and you will see that part update here. This is from when I just connected everything the first time. I will mention though, if you have to update the Bluetooth dongle, it could actually disconnect mid update, and it happened to me and I couldn't connect anything. My phone went to sleep and whatever I did on the junction or on the shifters, nothing worked. So if that happens to you, the only thing you need to do is disconnect the battery from the system and connect it again, and it kind of reset the system. At least that worked for me. So could be good to know. No reason to panic. The last thing you need to do is to disconnect the system from the etube app, and you do that by the Bluetooth LE disconnected option, which is weird English, but that's how you do it. If you don't, you won't be able to shift. So there you go.
Also, I should mention, if you use the iPad app, you also have a diagnostics function, basically an error checker for all the components that's connected to your system, which can be good to know if you're experiencing any problems with any part on your bike. There's also another solution if you don't have the Bluetooth capabilities, and that's to use the Di2 Charger, which is the, let's see, SM-BCR2 Charger. Which has a USB connection. that you connect to your computer once you have this connected to your junction, and that only works on Windows though. But then you can also mess around with all the settings for the shift buttons and whatnot. You Di2 users out there have probably messed around with this before, but hopefully it might be a good reference if you're thinking about changing and experimenting with your own gears. It's fun to play around with for sure. Like I said, you can configure everything to mimic ETAP, for example, if that's your jam. So try it out if you have the chance, and let me know what kind of configuration you prefer. That's it for this time. If you found this interesting and helpful, feel free to leave a like and subscribe if you want to see that build video finally sometime soon, hopefully in the new year. Sorry, catch you in the next one. Peace!